There's a delay. Play. See, you're strumming, and it's sort of like you could hear it only after the fact.
Oh, but
Yeah,
my voice is not delayed.
your voice is good. We're live now, by the way, but it's
All right,
okay.
good,
We're
good.
just
We're all
jamming
good.
live. We're jamming, my friend. We're jamming.
We're
Want me to get my
jamming.
guitar?
We're jamming.
That's the problem with Zoom. The audio of an instrument is always delayed, unless you got some sort of real time thing going on.
I actually had no idea. I've actually never played guitar on the Zoom before, but the
Mm.
Zoom is it's a mystery to me, bro. I struggle with it, and I'm just happy that you and I were able to figure this thing out because
It was my
there's
fault.
been no. It's hey man, you came on, you were clear as a bell, you looked great, and I it could have easily been on my side. So I was like struggling trying to figure it out, but fortunately we got it. Now we're live, all
Now we're
good.
live.
Yeah.
Doug, do me a favor. Just go down a little bit because your head's getting chopped off right here.
Okay.
Can you do that?
Or I can back up like this.
Or you can back up. You can lean back and.
I got this thing that's got a zoom on it. It's got like
Oh yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's a lot better. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Look at that. I got a remote control too, but I don't know what it does.
yeah, I just actually, to be honest with you, this is the first time I use this kind of camera setup. I usually use my phone,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought for Jimmy, I can't roll with the phone, man. I gotta upload it somehow. So I went with the Clear One. This is a Clear One Zoom camera system that is pretty.
I like it. It looks really nice. Is that your setup in your basement or you're in your jam room or whatever it is?
My This is in my studio room. I wish I had a basement, man. That's an East Coast thing.
Yeah.
Um, we in California, we really not very many people have a basement. I don't know why. I guess the water tables.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's two things. I think it's earthquakes and water.
Yeah, well, definitely earthquakes would be bad, but I think yeah, the water table was high too, so you'd be having some issues all the time with water coming in.
Yeah.
But I have a it's a house, it's a little pool house outside of my house, and it's I've lived here for 20 something 25 years or something, and man, this room has had I've had everybody in this room from obviously Coverdale had been here with me. Ronnie James Dio had came over and a couple times worked with me here. Glenn and I did a ton of work here. And then just all kinds of sessions and stuff I've done. This is like this has got this, if these walls could talk, it would be insane.
Do you have a name for your studio?
Um, I did. David and I used to call it the Mojo something. I forgot. I
Oh,
forgot what I
you need
forgot.
a name. And
It's on it,
if anybody's watching and they got a cool name, just type it in there and we can maybe like baptize it today.
right now it should be called messystudios.com. We love messes. We love cables on the floor and tons of amps everywhere and pedals everywhere. It's pretty
All
messy,
right.
but that's the thing about it. A studio, if it's pristine, clean, it's kind of a little bit like, okay, not sure if it's giving me a vibe yet. But when it's messy, you kind of just go there. Let's just rock. That's it.
It's a good point. That's how I feel about my basement. About my wife, she disagrees.
Well, you got to give it up to the missus, man. The wife. Fortunately, I clean up after my missus, so it's like I don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
Me, but
All right.
anyway.
So, good news. I mean, since the last time we talked, okay, so we had Karabi in the band, and then Glenn Hughes is in the band. Karabi's back in the band. I spoke to Karabi, I don't know, it was like a month ago, less than a month ago, on the streets of Montreal. And
Nice.
he was, great guy, always a great interview. And he kind of explained it to me. Maybe you want to just give everybody a little bit of a history lesson of he's back in the band.
Well, we're grateful to, we love John, and we always had John is kind of the quintessential Dead Daisies guy. He's done the most records out of the 6 studio albums that have been done,
Yep.
and he definitely put his mark on stuff. And um, Well, let me start back. In 2012 or 13 was when the first album came out, and that was David Lowy and John Stevens, and I didn't really know about it. I didn't know about the Dead Daisies at that point. Little by little, Marco Mendoza joined up, and then Brian Tichy, and then they got Richard Fortus, Dizzy Reed, and John Corabi, and that's when they put out a video for Midnight Moses, and I was like, man, that's pretty freaking kick ass. That's great. And I'll tell you a side story, Jimmy. Is like I knew John Corabi when we were kids in Philadelphia, and there was
Wow.
we were too young to, we couldn't legally go to the clubs, but we had all fake IDs, and we could go to the clubs in New Jersey. And there was a band that played Midnight Moses, and it was their signature track, and they would like, it was like the big moment of the night when they played Midnight Moses, and we didn't even know it wasn't their song. Later found out it was Alex Harvey group. And then 20 something, 30 something years later, here's John Corabi doing it with the Dead Daisies. I'm like, that bastard, he did it. He pulled it great. That's like, I had totally forgotten about that song. And they sounded great. It's a really great song off of cover of a Revolution. But a lot of people thought that was the Dead Daisies. And that's when I first heard of them. And I joined up right after that. Guns N' Roses went back out together. And Richard said, you should get Doug. And I knew all those guys. They're all my buddies anyways, you know. Me and David Lowy talked, and we hit it off. And we made a couple records with John. That was, you know, he had already done Revolution, and we did a couple of records together. And then we did a live record. But eventually, you know, John wanted to kind of focus on solo stuff a little bit. He had been trying to do it on the side, and his son was playing drums for him. And he's like, come on, Dad, let's, you know, we got to do some shows. So that's when John split for a little while. And we had a great run after that with Glenn Hughes, which we were blessed to have Glenn. You know, he's, you know, he's a legend, it's Glenn Hughes. So we wrote a little differently together with him, and I wrote some things specifically for him because I know Glenn and I know what he likes. And yeah, so it was going really well, but you know, pandemic made it a little difficult for us to tour and stuff. And eventually, you know, Glenn wanted to get back to doing his Deep Purple stuff. He covers the Deep Purple albums, and he's got a great band. So at that point, we were kind of just taking a break, and somehow we got in touch with Corabi at some point just to see what he was up to, and we decided that we would put a best of album out, best of 6 studio albums, and featuring John and Glenn mostly, and David and John Stevens too.
You know, it's incredible when I put each of the songs on from the greatest hits, and every song is like a knockout, you know, and it speaks. John Corabi's he's a huge talent, and the only person pissed off at John rejoining the Dead Daisies is John Corabi's son.
Well, I mean,
that's what John told me. He goes, my sons go, come on, Dad, what are you doing? We're just starting the solo thing here.
Yeah, but he can always do that when he's got free time. He's been on the road. I think that's when you saw him in Montreal. Was doing solo, supporting Tom Keeper and Winger, maybe?
No, actually. So he broke off from that pack, and he did the acoustic set a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And then, yeah. So he was just doing the acoustic on a couple of side shows here and there when that group wasn't touring, you know, as a package.
You know, it's such a great show. I mean, because it's very mellow and John talks a lot. You really get to get a feel for his personality, and he's such a cool dude, you know, like, I mean, literally one of the few musicians he's got no ego. I mean, you can basically, you can tell him whatever you want to tell him. And he's just like a rock, you know, but he definitely, with the Dead Daisies, we crank it up. We put on a show that we changed gears with Glenn. It was a different kind of a show. It was more, you know, kind of a muso type of thing. But with John, it's pure rock and roll, and he's the MC of the party. You know, he basically wants people to have a blast with the band and rock out. You know, That's what we do.
You know, it's amazing, Doug. When you guys played Montreal, and I'm sure you did this everywhere else, first you played the music store, which was Steve's, if you remember
Yeah,
or not.
yeah. That's one of the
You
most
did a
famous
set. You
stores.
did a set there, right? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say one of the most famous stores in the world, Steve's Music.
Yeah.
I have a T-shirt from that time actually that I still wear. I want to keep it nice in case they don't have any more when I come up there next time. But Steve's Music's famous. It's a great store, and they've always been friends of ours.
If you don't have it, we don't need it. That's their motto on this shirt. At least that's what it was at one time.
That's cool.
um, you did a set in a music store during the afternoon, let's say at like 3, 4 o'clock, and then you did your gig at night, and you kept repeating that. I mean, is that burnout? I mean, don't you guys get burned out of playing and play, especially for John, who's got to sing, right?
Yeah,
Twice.
singing. I mean, a lot of guys, they won't even talk during the show day or in off days or whatever. They'll just be like, you know,
Yeah.
like that. But John's he's pretty much bulletproof. I mean, it takes a lot for him to even say anything. But I think his voice was never burned out. Just physically and mentally, sometimes when you're on the road, you get like one after another, after another, after another, after another, and it does sometimes get on you a little bit. But we on this, now that John's back, we plan on taking good care of him. He's like, John to me is a legend. Like I said, I've known him since we were kids. Like I was in the 10th grade when I met John, which was many years ago, obviously, and he's legendary. I mean, his work with the Scream. I remember when that came out. Actually, he had a band before the Scream. They were playing in LA around the same time. I had a band called Lion, and we were playing, and that band was great. Angora, I think they were called. Then he got the Scream, and they put a record
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
and that's a killer album. With Bruce Boyer on guitar and John Altoretti from Badlands and some other guys I forgot, but yeah, then the Motley Crue story, which grunge came and wiped everybody out except for Motley Crue, because basically they had a ace in the hole with John Corabi.
Yeah.
And that got them through that period where they made a change. They went a little darker, a little heavier, and John's he's hilarious too. I mean, that was a really good record that they made, I think. And then obviously, he's done all kinds of other stuff. But the Dead Daisies is when I discovered him the last time, was like I said, 2015.
And to the songs that were chosen, right? And first of all, it's the whole catalog. It's like a little bit of everything, even the Glenn Hughes era. And
of course.
And there's 2 unreleased tracks for the people out there. Were they from what sessions were they from? That's from the Corabi sessions, right?
No, they were from that's the Glenn Hughes era.
Oh, I didn't hear them. That's why.
Yeah, you got to hear them. They're really cool. They're really cool. So basically, what happened is during the pandemic, we had this album Holy Ground in the can that we wrote together, and we felt it was a really strong album with Glenn. It was our first album with him, and the pandemic hit, and we couldn't really go on the road, so we wanted to hold off the release, and it ended up we put out like our first big single was going to be Like No Other. That was going to be the big single.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't want to give that away, so we started with Unspoken, and that kind of became a underground single during the pandemic. But we were stuck. We couldn't go anywhere. So Glenn and I started writing a little bit, and I helped him I kind of produced his vocals and demos and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked up some songs, and I threw in some bits here and there, but basically there was some stuff that Glenn had, and those are 2 of the songs from that time. They didn't make it on the Radiance album, not because they weren't great, but just because we didn't need them, and it was a different vibe. It was a little darker and deeper vibe than, with Radiance, we wanted to just make it a straight up 70s kick-ass rock record. And those songs were very deep. The Healer is probably one of the heaviest tracks that we've ever done. It's very dark and heavy, but it's super cool, very cinematic. And then Let It Set You Free is a beautiful melodic, you know, song of hope kind of thing about the human condition. And those are extra tracks on the best of that people will get to hear, and I'm glad they're coming out. They're really cool songs.
You know, going back in time, you're a child of the Sunset Strip in a sense, right? You moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, and you kind of like saw the early bands sort of come up, correct?
Yeah, the first band that I saw, Quiet Riot was already. I think they were already. They were
What year
signed
did
late.
what year did you go to California or Los Angeles?
It was 81. The end of 81, I got to California, and so one of the first people I met was Robin Crosby from Rat, and super nice guy. He was a bit older than me, and but he and I kind of just we just hit it off. You know, I'd see him. I never had his phone number or anything, but we'd always hang out.
Okay, you're breaking
You
up,
know,
right? Mike, you're breaking up, right?
and I was kind of. He took me under his wing a little bit because I was young. There we go. How about now? Is that better?
Yeah, it's better. If you have anything open on your browsers, just shut them down, with the exception of Zoom.
Um, yeah, I do have one thing open. Porno stuff.
Save that for later.
I'm just kidding. Um,
We don't want any incidents.
nah, no, but when I got to LA, I met Robin Crosby
The
and
king. Yeah.
he cool dude. I saw Rat when they had Jake E. Lee on guitar. It was a 4-piece, and Motley Crue was kicking around town. I saw them play a couple times, but then I didn't have any money really. I was working in a music store, but I didn't really have enough money to go out, and I ended up getting a girlfriend, and we started to be exclusive. So I didn't go out for a while, and then I started playing with several bands around the strip, and eventually was in a band called, like I mentioned, Lion, and we were not. Everybody passed on us because we were definitely not the Sunset Strip sound. We were definitely more of a European kind of Whitesnake, Thin Lizzy kind of thing, and it wasn't. You know, they were more interested in the glam sound, I think, or the rock and roll, like Aerosmith or Guns N' Roses type of vibe. So we got passed on, but we finally did get a deal, and then the rest is history. I went from that band faltered, and I really wanted it to happen. I got some offers to join other bands, but I wanted to stay with that band. But we just got caught up in contractual problems and eventually broke up. And then I started playing with a few other people here and there, and one thing led to another. And finally, when I got working with Ronnie James Dio, is when I really got out there and started to, tour and get
a name for yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had a little bit of a rep, around town for sure, and then in certain places where Lion had done well, but
Did you see Wasp at their beginnings?
I was at Wasp's very first LA debut performance. I was in the audience, and they had these plastic bowls. They call them Tupperware, and they had the red meat in there, and they had. I'll never forget. He just stopped the show, or I do forget what if he was playing or if they stopped it, but he just.
Oh, you're breaking up at the best part. Doug, you're breaking up.
And grab a piece of nice steak, red meat, and chuck it out. I'm better.
You know
Hello,
what? Yeah.
Jimmy.
You're cut. Are you?
Jimmy.
Am I cutting out? I think you froze. You're frozen. Doug, can you hear me? Doug? Wow, it really froze. So stand by, everybody, as we try to get Doug. I'm going to try to get Doug back. No worries. He's probably going to dial back in. This usually happens. People usually freeze. And then, you can see me. I'm going to wait for Doug. Doug froze. This is what usually happens. The guest freezes. And then they drop off and they pop back in. But in the meantime, you can pick up the Dead Daisies, the best of. It's going to come out on August 18th, I believe, on Steamhammer Records. I'm waiting for Doug to come back on. That's right, August 18th. You could buy the double CD, or I believe it's a double vinyl as well. 2 unreleased tracks as we wait for Doug. And I will, guys, tell us a story, Jim. Well, we can ask Doug about this. Oh, he's coming back. He's coming back. Hold on. Hold on. He's coming back on. Connecting to audio.
Jimmy.
You're back. You're back.
Sorry,
Don't worry, I
don't
covered
know.
for you. I covered for you.
Thank you, bro. I'm on my fastest connection. I'm on the
I
best
covered.
connection I got, but I apologize.
Do me a favor. Go to turn off your. Go ahead. Sorry.
Glitchy. Anyways, where were we?
You had a big Tupperware of meat, and he was tossing them. Blackie was tossing them out to the audience.
Yeah, and I just said, it was the red meat thing that lost for. I just said I wish that people would be throwing steaks out nowadays, because you could just grab one and take it home, have a barbecue.
But buddy, people don't throw steaks out today. You can't afford to throw steaks out into the crowds, right? People would have their barbecues ready. I'm going to mention to you that I think it was Kathy and Chris Holmes who say hi, by the way. I'm not sure if you could even hear me anymore. Doug?
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah. All right, let us continue. All right, let's go back to, were there any other bands in the early days on Sunset Strip? Can you hear me?
All right.
All right, were there somebody put a piece of steak there. Were there any other bands in the early days that you're kind of like, wow, that band's going to make it? Now I lost your audio. Okay, go ahead. Doug, do this. Turn off your video.
Check 1 2. Check.
Check 1 2. Turn off your video for a second. Turn off your video.
Okay.
Okay.
How about now?
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Okay.
Check.
So
check.
Okay. So were there any? I'm going to maybe find a picture of you and put a picture of you instead. So this way, we don't.
Yeah, that's cool. So you were asking about other bands, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I saw Rat with Robin and Warren and those guys, that was like, okay, these guys, they had some kick-ass tunes, right? So it was pretty for sure that they were up level from a lot of bands.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the main one. There was I never actually saw Guns N' Roses, but I heard about them, and there was a big buzz about them. Obviously, Poison used to play shows supporting Lion, actually, and they got snatched up pretty quickly because they were just over the top, with what they were doing. Brett and CC, they put on a great show, and they had really cool songs for that kind of stuff. But after that, kind of the dregs of the glam scene started coming out, and it was nobody's. I mean, there was a lot of killer bands, Armored Saint, Tough, and all these bands, but there was a bunch of other bands that were maybe just kind of tagging along for the ride and weren't doing something as original, maybe. I don't know. So it got watered down a little bit, and then eventually it went away. That's when later bands started getting. I remember Philadelphia had a thing with bands. Portland had a thing with bands. Well, like Philadelphia had Britney Fox, and it had Cinderella and Skid Row.
All right, it's cool. All right,
and
I mean,
a few others.
Sure. Okay. So
Portland had.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Eventually, Seattle. Yeah, eventually Seattle kicked in.
All right. Yeah, of course, of course. So tell me quickly about you joined Dio, which we've talked about that in the past, but for all those people who don't know, you have to actually, let's go one step before. Like, you auditioned for Kiss, right? And I know you've told the story many times, but do you remember what songs you actually auditioned for Kiss? This is like before they got Vinnie Vincent. You were a young lad back then, right?
Right. No, that was I remember Black Diamond for sure. Firehouse for sure, and I think the third one on the first go around was Strutter, I think.
Okay.
And then I went back again a couple weeks later and played with them again, and they had Dr. Love and Rock and Roll All Night, I think it was. No, Detroit Rock City it was. Detroit Rock City. Yeah. Detroit Rock City and Dr. Love were two more they wanted to jam on. And yeah, I was really, I was very young, and I probably played the stuff okay, but I think as a, hanging out, they could tell I was just a kid. I wasn't really ready to, I'll tell you what, Jimmy, the most important thing other than playing when you're trying to work with other musicians, because it is close, like a close relationship, is the hangout factor. You can't have like some guy, it doesn't matter how brilliant the guy might be on his instrument or singing or whatever, if you can't actually feel comfortable eating lunch together or waking up and having a coffee together, just being normal together, then it's not going to work out. The hangout factor is very important.
And you're young, and they're older guys, right? And they're kind of looking at
these guys were worldwide rock stars. I mean, I was just they were. I think the reason is they were at that time. Everybody kind of thought it was cool to find an unknown person, like, whoa, where did they find this guy or that guy? So they did that. They found Vinnie Vincent, and he was the guy, but he was a bit older, and he was a great guitar player, but then it just petered out.
Doug, let me ask you this. So somebody wrote, Chick Eastwater says, when was this? Makeup came off? No, this was at the time when they still had their makeup on. They're looking for Vinnie Vincent, or a guitar. Sorry, they got Vinnie Vincent, right? Were they planning a character for you, or were you kind of thinking, man, what kind of character would I like to be? This must have been gone through your head, right?
No,
I could be the eagle. I could be the hawk.
I didn't even think about it. They would have made me a sheep or something. I don't know, whatever. But no, I didn't think about it. That's an interesting question, because their makeup, nobody had seen them without their makeup. So it was hard for me to look them in the eye, because I felt guilty, like, oh man, I'm not supposed to look at them, and it was just, the whole thing was just a little bit awkward for me. I didn't, now I would just be like, these are normal people. I'm a normal person. We all are doing our best. Let's just play together and see how it feels. But when you're a kid, I don't know, things get in your head, and it gets in your way. But they still had makeup, and they came back out with makeup with Vinny being the ox or whatever it was. I forget.
Yeah, not the ox. I
know.
What's it? Geez, now I'm
symbol.
stumped. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, somebody's going to write that in,
All right.
and I will repeat it. But go ahead. Yeah.
So
Ace
yeah,
Aldrich. Yeah. But I mean, there must have been like something, man, if I get into this band, I'm going to have to wear makeup. Am I going to
I'll
wear
tell you
Ace's
that.
makeup?
No, I'll tell you what was really the thing that blew me away the most was playing through four Marshall stacks, all plugged in, all turned
Yeah.
on, and it was loud as hell. And it was like I was like, that is the shit, man. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also a cool thing. It was really Eric Carr that came to saw me play in a club, and then he came back, and then he called me at this music store I was working at and said, "Okay, I want you to come down to the record plant and meet the guys." And but Eric really,
It's the Ankh Warrior. Ankh,
yeah.
ANKH Warrior.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ankh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, he was that, and he did a great job. But I think they were all the bands were looking for the Eddie Van Halen type of guy. They wanted a guy that could shred. I think in hindsight, I think keeping like the Ace vibe. I mean, obviously keeping Ace would have been optimum, but and because Ace is a great guitar player. I mean, trying to learn those parts. I had been kind of getting into the guys like Randy Rhoads but also Jimmy Page and Tony Iommi and Blackmore and Eddie Van Halen. And when I listened to Ace Frehley, he was definitely it was he had his own thing, and it was like really cool.
What's the most interesting part of Ace's playing that intrigued you the most? Is it some sort of
It
what
was
was it?
just a
Was
feel.
it tone, feel? Like what was it?
It was a feel thing. I mean, he kind of he was closer to a Jimmy Page guy, but he had a lot of cool parts that he would play. If you listen to his parts on those records, he's coming up with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of cool melodic things and simple, effective parts. Really cool. Um,
Okay.
he's never probably been known to be a shredder in any way, but I think that's kind of what they were looking to do, was to compete with, if you remember that Ozzy was still out at that time, um, and all these bands had hot shot guitar players, so that's what they were looking for.
You could have been that hotshot guitar player. I mean,
Well,
geez. I
I
mean,
definitely could play, but I mean, like I said, I was very young, but I
yeah.
think they got a good guy with Vinny, and they did some good songs together. I really like the well, I love that album that they did. I think
Look,
on Creatures of the Night they had a lot of guest musicians like the Kulick brothers
yeah,
and
yeah.
some other people. Maybe Vinny probably played on it at some point. They had some cool songs on that record,
It's a great
and
album.
War Machine was on there and some other
Oh
stuff.
yeah, good song. Yeah, it
Um,
was.
which when I was in the studio playing over, Gene said, "Hey, I want you to put a solo on this song, and what would you play for this?" Like, kind of like, we want to see what you would do with it. And I was listening to that riff, and I was like, "What key is this thing in, man?" I don't. It's like it was kind of freaking me out a little bit. And I started playing something, and Gene goes, "What if you try some major scale on that?" And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "Do re mi fa so," and I go, "Oh yeah, 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 okay." And I kind of equated that to Michael Schenker, like major pentatonic again with minor pentatonic, and that's what I played on that in the studio as a reference. My solo's not on the album. It was just they were just
No,
testing.
no, no. Yeah, yeah. They were sort of auditioning you with the material that they had recorded. That's what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Well, because we
and
don't want to hear the news tomorrow. Doug Ulrich played on Creatures of the Night.
no, but it was a good
Then there'll be
experience. And
like
again,
pictures of you, with your face on Creatures of the Night. You know.
that's funny, man. No, I it was a good experience, and I was grateful for the opportunity, and it really kicked me in the ass. Like, hey, I got something going, so I got to really now kick into gear and start really trying to work hard and learn music more. Learn more about music. Because when Gene tells you to play a major scale, and you're like, "What's that?" You
It's not
know,
good.
I'm basically playing from the my heart and my ear. So that's you don't really know what you're doing at that time when you're a kid, I guess sometimes.
I'm pretty sure, Ace was not a student of music either, right? He wasn't somebody who was trained. I think he just played like you, right? He kind of learned how to become a
Yeah, but I'm
guitarist,
I'm
right?
pretty sure if you said to Ace play the major scale, he could probably do it. But he he's definitely and God bless him, man. He's still kicking ass out there right now.
Hmm. For sure, absolutely. All right, so you're in Dio, and I mean, we've talked about the Dio years before in the past, but tell me about Ronnie. He's jamming in your room there. You're in Doug's snug, your jam room. That's what somebody wrote. But
Yeah,
I mean, you're coming over, and you know what? I put on Killing the Dragon recently, and wow, there's some good stuff there. Like it's sort of like the Dark Horse album that people need to get.
it is.
Um,
It's a cool album. It's Ronnie's return to kind of straight up melodic heavy rock, and heavy metal, and it was a transition year because that's when I came in and Craig Goldie left, and
mm-hmm.
Jimmy Bain was still in the band, and Simon, and Scott Warren, and it was a blast, man. I've got such great memories of that, of going in the studio with Ronnie and just feeling like immediately I was part of a family, you know?
You've played with some great voices, man. When you think about it, David Coverdale, Ronnie James Dio, Glenn Hughes, of course, Karabi, right?
Yeah.
You've played with the best voices of them all. I mean, what was the coolest thing about Dio that you were surprised to you met him, you go, wow, I didn't know he was like that. What was that? What was that moment? What was that thing about him that you go, man, I didn't know he was
He
like that.
There was a lot of them, Jimmy. He was a really simple, down to earth cat. You'd go to his house to have a meeting or to write some music or to you know whatever, discuss something, and you go up. He would never come to the door. You would just go in his garage and go up the stairs next to his studio and just go to the kitchen because he was always in his kitchen, and he'd be sitting there or standing there in the morning listening to sports radio, and he loved American
Yeah.
football, and he would he'd be listening to the sports guy on it was a little transistor radio. It was like old school,
Mm-hmm.
and he loved it. And then he'd be like, okay, right, let's get to work, and we'd go in the studio or do whatever we had to do. But I loved that he was so down to earth, and he was a no BS guy, man. Everything was straight up with him. You didn't have to guess. I don't know. A lot of people, like, we've all had those people in our lives that you either work with or you're friends with or you're dating or whatever, and you can't figure out where they're at. Like, are they okay? Are they pissed off? Are they happy? Like, where are we at? Like, is she gonna break up with me tomorrow? You don't know. With Ronnie, it
You always
was
knew.
you knew it. You were he made everybody better for that because he would make you feel confident and strong, and he would encourage you to be the best you could be. And that's that's the greatest takeaway from anybody that's gotten to work with Ronnie is and he learned from the best. I mean, he was working with amazing musicians even prior to working with Blackmore, but he and
Did he do
Black
crossword puzzles all the time?
had a, and I loved his work ethic. He loved he loved to rehearse. He'd be the first one there and the last to leave.
Um, you there still?
Yeah. Sorry,
Okay, good, good. Yeah,
did
no,
you catch
I'm just trying to see if it's he liked crossword puzzles. He liked to watch like game shows, and he liked to trivia. I know
Yeah.
that much, right? At least
Yeah, because he
when
was
what you said.
crazy. He probably had an IQ 130 plus. Who knows what it was, but he was very intelligent, and he sat there when I was recording guitars on Killing the Dragon. He sat there for a couple of weeks while I was doing my work, but basically
Hmm.
every day he'd be sitting doing crossword puzzles the whole day while work was going on.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's why the spoken word or the written word was very important to him, right? He really had a good grasp as a
Man,
craft.
he had some I mean, the stuff, the rainbow stuff, the Dio stuff, the Sabbath stuff. It was all. It was just. It was incredible. You know.
No,
I mean,
no.
really, for me, the greatest heavy metal singer.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Me too. Um, when you like, I've even asked you this before in the past, but I'll elaborate. So Magica, there was one song that was released, Electrica. Is that it? Yeah, it was Electrica in 2012. Wendy's saying there's still some more songs that were demos. I know there's been a lot of talk about this. Has there been any progress of releasing these demos or reworking them that you know of?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, so Electra was part of what was going to be a next album for Ronnie, but he basically came up with Electra to promote the tour that he wanted to do at the end of 2009. He was
Okay.
going to re-release Killing the Dragon and a live show that we did from that tour, and that song was going to promote the album and the tour, and it was going to be this whole thing. And then he got sick.
Yeah.
He found out he had cancer, so it all went away. But the song Electra did come out, and it was pretty cool, man. But prior to Electra, he had another song that, and I'm sure he had lots of bits of songs and maybe a few that were completed, but he did give me a completed song prior to Electra that he wanted to be the promotional track. And then he basically moved away from that, and we went with Electra instead. But I had that track, and I put a solo on it,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't have a title, but I had it, and I talked to Wendy about it, and she never, you know, to be fair, I didn't go over and play it for her, but I did talk to her about it on the phone, and then she kind of wasn't ready to listen to anything like that at that point.
Okay.
Years went on, and and I and then I ended up doing a renovation at my house, and I took those hard drives and I put them in storage. So at the moment, there's talk that Wendy wants to put out some unreleased stuff next year in 24 with Ronnie, including remake of the track that he sent me, which I am still in the process of finding it. And Wendy texted me last week and said, any luck? And I said, I'll get it, Wendy. I just have, dozens of hard drives that I need to go through to find it. And once I do, I'll give her the track, and I'll either record it with her and them, or somebody else will. But it was haunting because it was Ronnie playing bass and playing rhythm guitar with a drum machine and singing, and the vocal was just haunting, man. Really crazy, like kind of.
You know what's funny? When you're in Montreal, we interviewed you in Montreal. I asked you about the track just quickly, and you go, "Oh man, I got it upstairs on my laptop."
Yeah.
At the time, you had it on your laptop 4 years ago or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe it's on that laptop.
It's not. I did check that, but so I did a renovation during 2020 when everything was shut down. I wanted to get my expand my house a little bit and clean it up and get new stuff. And so I wanted to pack everything up nice and neat and get it out of here, because when there's construction, it would have hard drives would get dusty and all that. So I including that computer was all backed up on hard drives. So I'll find it, and I hope Wendy has some other kick-ass stuff. I really do, because that would be pretty cool to hear an album of unreleased stuff that was original music, and or some really cool versions. I mean, I can only imagine there's got to be some cool stuff that they did with, maybe they didn't use with Viv.
I would think there is. She told me Wendigo, she's got like a garage full of stuff, to go through. Well, now we're losing your audio. You're breaking up. We're not having a good day, are we? Oh man, you're breaking up.
Jimmy, Jimmy, Jimmy.
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Man, we're
I'm
not having
sorry,
a good
bro.
day. It's okay. It's all right. Like I replaced you with a picture of the dead daisy, so
Okay.
at least that's
No,
good.
let's
That's not too
let's
bad.
just ask Ronnie. Ronnie, quit fucking around. Get us a good connection, bro. Come on, man. Ronnie can do it
Come on, Ronnie. Come on, Ronnie.
from the
Uh,
heavens.
from
Come
the
on, Ronnie, give us a
heavens.
good connection.
Okay, let's flip over to David Coverdale. You know, you get the gig with this guy. This guy's like royalty, right? You walk in, you're like, man, this is David Coverdale. It's like, wow, oh my lord. What was it about him that you were so surprised to learn about?
Um, he was he's a gentleman. You know, I mean, I wasn't surprised about anything. I knew about him. I was a big fan of his work, and I knew about the early Whitesnake, even though it wasn't really readily available in the U.S. But I knew about it from my first, well, with the band Lion. The singer Cal Swan
Mm-hmm.
had been a fan of early Whitesnake, and he had all those albums: "Come and Get It," "Ready and Willing," and "Love Hunter," and a bunch. Um, and so he and I just hit it off because he was happy that I knew that stuff, and I talked to him about, like, eventually putting some new music out and trying to bridge the gap between Europe and the U.S., or the U.S. and Canada, which was more of the glam era of Whitesnake, versus Europe, which was more the blues based. And that's when we started to try and develop a sound that would kind of cross into both those. And I thought we came up with some really cool stuff.
Yeah, Forevermore's a great album. It's like it's fresh.
There was one
Um,
before that called "Good to
yeah,
Be Bad," which
good to be back. Yeah,
I actually really like that even better, because that was the first album that he and I did.
yeah.
You know, like, that was where the pressure was. We were like, okay, nobody's heard any new Whitesnake for a long time, so this better be good. And I was sitting in my room here, and I had this thing with three chords, wow, 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 and I had it in my mind that just was like, "Tell me, baby." I went, wow, wow, wow. Tell me, baby, wow, 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 what's on your mind? Da, ba, ba. And I told that to David, and he was sitting right behind me in the chair that I'm in right now. He goes, "Play it." And I started playing, and he sang it. He sang my little goofy words that I made up, which was, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up with that Coverdale voice. And it was just like, damn, that is just so. We would get together and write, and there would be always, after a week, there'd be at least two. Maybe if we had a bad week, it'd be one song, but you would always come away with two, maybe two and a half songs, maybe three. One time we did three in a week. We'd write and demo together, and it sounded like a record. I mean, these demos were like killer. And David would get so into it. He'd be like, "Yeah, let's overdub it hard. Let's do this. Let me put a harmony. Grab your guitar. Let's try something else. Can you put something, blah blah blah." And it was, so he'd walk out of here, or I'd walk out of his studio with a CD of these couple songs, and then the drive from my house to his house was about 7 or 8 hours, and you'd basically just listen to that thing over on repeat. And by the time you got home, it was like, yeah, this is Whitesnake, and it was exciting because it was brand new stuff that we knew nobody had ever heard, and we just created it, and it was cool.
Right, good stuff. I should also mention the Dead Daisies are going on tour, right? In
Yeah, we're
in,
gonna come
in
to Canada. We're gonna come see you, man.
August 22. It starts in Pennsylvania, right? Back to the roots. New
Back to the roots
Jersey.
of Pennsylvania. Back, my family's gonna be there, or my family that's able to be there will be there. And we got Pennsylvania. We got
Jersey right after.
yep.
Toronto, Canada. You're doing London, Ontario, Canada. You're doing after that Kitchener. Wow, you're doing a lot of Hamilton, then Montreal, then Ottawa. That's pretty cool, man. Then you're going, oh, then you're going to Vancouver. Then you're going
I've
on the
never been
West
to
Coast.
Ottawa. It's my first time going to Ottawa. I can't wait.
Well, Ottawa's like a little mini London. You know, they
That's
have their Parliament building, right? They have their Parliament building in London. Well,
yeah.
Ottawa's got a little bit smaller than that. So it kind of
I'm
reminds you of
I'm
London.
super. I'm extremely excited about Canada. It's been a long time. I think the last time we were there was maybe 17 or something. I'm not sure,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
very excited. I always love to cross the border and get into that great country. And I actually, Montreal is one of the great rock and roll cities in the world. I mean, I got a lot of friends in Montreal. A lot of musicians that I know come from there, and it's like a real, it's a rock and roll town, like in the same way that like Boston is,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Nashville is a real town now. Like Montreal's got some of the greatest fans. I remember playing, I think it's called Bell Center
Yep. Yep.
with Whitesnake and Scorpions,
Oh
and
yeah.
it was it was insane, man. It was like that's a real, like, this is really a rockin' town.
Yeah. When you guys played here with the Dead Daisies, Montrealers love the Dead Daisies. Actually.
Well, we love you guys. We can't wait. We're coming back. We want everyone to come out, and
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna have a huge party. I mean, I want to see that place sold out. I want to have everybody come out. We're gonna have a blast. I mean, Karabi will be there. That's worth the price of admission right there. And then you got Brian Tishy on drums.
That's right.
Brian Tishy is pound for pound my favorite drummer
Of
in
all
rock.
time. Okay. In rock.
Well, I'd say, yeah. I mean, I love John Bonham. I love Cozy Powell, Tommy Aldrich, all these people. But Brian is he's just amazing. And then we've got David Lowy and I on guitar, and then we got the new guy, Michael Devon, who is our secret weapon. He's young and sexy as hell, and he plays great. He sings great, and he's like a secret weapon for sure for us.
Is there anything else you want to mention to everyone? I think you pretty much covered everything.
Well,
Go
we're
ahead.
just thankful for our fans, and which are really friends. We've made a lot of friends over the years, and we've got a bunch in Canada, all over the world. But like I say, going to Canada has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
A lot of it just like Canada is a sacred place, just like in the way like Japan is. It's not easy to get there sometimes because there if you're it's just a little difficult to cross that border sometimes, and like I say, same with Japan or Australia. Those are countries that are always really like they're careful about letting a band come in. They want to make sure everything's cool. Of course, I mean, what kind of trouble could we make? We're not going to do anything. We just want to kick ass, and play rock.
Turn on your video again. Let's see if the video is going to work now. Turn on your video if you can.
Let's see.
Let's see. Okay.
Hey, there it is.
There it is. Okay, let's see if it gets choppy. Does anybody else out there who's watching have any questions for Doug as we reach the final 5 or 10 minutes? If anybody has any questions, I know people have been texting as we've been going along, and
Cool.
there was a picture of you in the Dead Daisies instead of your video, but I hope just to keep things a little more stable in terms of connection. I have to think quick on my feet, my friend. See, again, you're freezing up. Well, there we go again. See, every time you turn your video on,
Is it still frozen?
No, it's not frozen now.
Sorry about
it's
that.
better. No, it's not. Don't worry, it's all good, man. It's all good. If anybody has any questions, new album. Okay, somebody, Brandon saying, is there a new album in the works? Are you writing material for a new album? New Dead Daisies album? As you answer that question, turn off your video. We'll go back to the non-video.
Wait a minute, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are you back? Am I back?
You're back. You're back. So
try this. I just switched to a different source. Maybe it'll be better. I don't know.
All right, go ahead. New album. Are you writing new material for the new Dead Daisies album?
Well, we've all got some. I'm sure we've all got some riffs. The cool thing about when we write together, we do it in person and we do it with five guys. And
Hmm.
I would say, there's a good chance that you might hear a song or a few maybe next year. Would love to do that. With we've got. I would love to hear Karabi and Devin together, with their vocals together on an album. You're going to hear it live. So let's see what happens. Right now we're focused on the best of album and promoting that, and basically, you know, getting an opportunity to come to play for everybody at this point.
Can you ask Doug, how was it working with Wasp on the Crimson Idol album? I think you played one song on that one. Can you ask Doug, how was it like working with Wasp on the Crimson Idol album?
It was interesting. I think Blackie had gone through a few different guys on that album trying to get an elusive sound that was in his head, and he called me and I went in and I played on like two or three songs actually, but only ended up making it on one.
Mm-hmm.
And he called me. Blackie was that was a strange hang. By that time, I had been doing some sessions. I'd been around a little bit, so I was comfortable. But he liked it being a little bit uncomfortable. I think he liked it just being like, I'm Blackie Lawless. I am the boss. I'm the man, And so I'd play something and I'd be really happy with it, which I'm a perfectionist, so it's not easy for me to be happy with something. But he would like go, yeah, that's pretty cool, but can you try something else? I'm like, okay, what do you got in mind? And he'd be like, I don't know, just play something. And so I did my best, and I was like, okay, cool. And he goes, good, good. And Frankie Benelli was there, I think, too, and he was like, yeah, I love it. And a couple days later, maybe it was a week, maybe it was 2 weeks later, I get a call from Blackie, and he goes, hey, Doug, I wanted to try some different stuff on that, on a couple of those things or whatever. And I was like, well, I mean, okay, but yeah, I mean, yeah. And it wasn't a big budget to begin with. It was, he had
Mm-hmm.
been working on this album and didn't have a lot of money left, I guess. And so he said, well, I just want you to come back and play. And I'm like, well, I mean, like, can we consider this like another day of recording? And he was like, no, I mean, I already paid you for the songs. And I was like, no, I know, but you were happy with it when I left. What happened? He goes, well, I just got some new ideas and I want to try it again. And I don't know. I think I had some other stuff going on. I was just like, Blackie, look, man, I'm happy to come in and play, but I mean, this is my gig. I gotta, so it didn't work out. I just said, if you got a budget of any kind, call me back. And he said, no, I really, want you to come in and play again because I already paid you. And so we got a little bit of a standoff there. And I just said, okay, well, let me know, and he's like, okay. And eventually I found out that he used one of the solos. So, and trust me, he still got a deal for that one solo. I mean, it wasn't, and it wasn't about that anyways. I definitely wanted to do the session and I was excited about it, but it was a
Doug, you
little,
got to eat. Everyone's got to eat, right? Everyone's got to pay bills, right? It's at the end
yeah.
of the
And
day,
then,
right?
but there's been a lot of times when I do stuff on, on spec, they call it on spec,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll do stuff as a favor because I care about what somebody's doing, or I got extra time and I'm free, and I was like, okay, I'm not, you know, I'm happy to do it, but I was probably busy and just didn't have the time. But I do like playing on other people's things sometimes when I
Sure, of
can.
course, when you can. Jim Harrison goes, Blackie got the 2-for-1 deal.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what? That's how it goes. That's rock and roll.
That's
Um,
rock and roll, Jimmy. I mean, hey,
that's rock.
at least I got on there. That's cool. I'm part of the Wasp history.
That's it. I mean, to me, Wasp is only it's Blackie and Chris Holmes. To me, those were the two guys that made Wasp what Wasp is and the legacy of Wasp.
And
that'll
another
always
cool,
be.
of all the rock stars that I've met, and I've met a lot. I've met so many of my heroes, and a lot of them are really great. Sometimes it doesn't go as well as you hope, whatever. But Chris Holmes is he's a sweet man. He's a really down to earth guy. As crazy as he plays, and he's he's been around the block, and he's a wild man on stage, but he's a really normal, down to earth person. Good dude.
I just saw Chris in London, and Chris is the kind of guy, he always has a story. He always got a story, and you got to listen to his story. He always got these great stories. And he's so passionate about his stories, too. He's a really nice guy.
I got a story of Chris. Before I knew Chris, or around, now I'd already done the Wasp thing, but I don't even think we got into that, because I was going to Japan for something by myself. It wasn't with the band. I was going to Japan to do a session, I think, or something like that. And Chris was on that flight. And I don't know how we got to be sitting next to each other. But in the end, we were in business class, and somehow he was like, and at that time, business class was just slightly better than economy.
Yeah.
And at that, he goes, "Hey man, let's go to the back of the jet. Let's go in the very back row." And he was like, he was trying to write a postcard for Lita Ford, and he's like, I need to talk to you, man. I got to get your advice. I got to have somebody I can trust. And he's writing this love letter postcard, and I said, "Well, that sounds pretty good, Chris." And I thought it was really, really cool that he was handwriting a postcard to his girlfriend or wife. I'm not sure if they were married or whatever, but I thought that's
a nice
pretty
story.
cool. But he was definitely pounding some drinks at that point. We both were, and we got into Japan, and we were going through customs, and he was kind of lit by that point, and he started talking to some Japanese people, and I'm like, "Dude, no, don't say that," And he's like, "Fuck it," It was funny. Now, in hindsight, it was funny, but nowadays, if you say the wrong thing in an airport, you're banned for life. But we got through customs, and it was all good. I mean, they let him in. Mind you, he's such a massive guy. They were probably just in awe of him. He's like so tall and with blonde hair, and I guess he had tattoos everywhere. But yeah,
I think he's like 6'6". He's like 6'6".
Yeah,
compared to the average height of Japan, right?
I saw him a couple years back in France. I think we were, because he lives there, and
yeah,
we didn't really get to hang out. It was one of those Dead Daisies nights where we were kind of rushing in and rushing out, and I just got to say hi to him. We took a photo together just for fun, and that was it. But yeah, it's definitely down to earth person.
Yeah, Kathy, his wife, is amazing too. They're both a great couple and great people, and super nice. This is Rushy67 says, met Doug at a guitar clinic with Reb Beach near Manchester a few years back. He was so jet lagged, but what an amazing night. A true gentleman of rock, signed my Lion CD. Thanks. Hope you are well.
I'll never forget that night, bro. That was so cool. But yeah, so basically we had been in Japan, and Whitesnake had played in Japan, and we were going directly to Europe. And we were putting out a live album with 4 new songs on it. And so, but the mixes that we were getting from LA weren't good enough. And so David said, "I need you to go back and work with the mixer, the engineer." We had a couple of days off, so I went back here to LA, and I worked and tried to help out. And so I had the last minute caught a flight from LA to Manchester, and I slept the entire flight. It was crazy, but I was still like, just my head was spinning. I mean, I landed that morning, and then I went in my room, took a shower, and we had the clinic, and it was a lot of fun. You know, it was we flipped the coin who would go first. Reb said, "Okay, I'll go first," and then we ended up jamming at the end. But it was really fun.
All right.
And
Jay
we did only.
says, go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry.
sorry.
No, I was
All
just
right.
gonna say, me and Reb, we did a couple of those things over the years. It was fun.
Jay says, in the 80s, I would always confuse him and the bassist. I would be writing names. Oh, wow. I'm going to try to get this straight here. Aldridge and Tommy as Aldrich. All
Yeah,
the days when I was people getting confused with Aldridge and Aldrich, right? So that's what he's
yeah,
trying to say. A lot of people get
yeah.
very
It's
confused.
normal. I mean, for the most part, I get people will say Aldridge, Doug Aldridge, and they won't even think of it, even if they know the spelling. But it's
It's
pronounced
close.
Aldrich, Aldrich,
Yes. Like Rich,
and
like Richie Rich.
yeah, Aldrich versus Aldridge. And Tommy, I would always get people asking me like, "Hey, what's up with your brother, man? How's he doing?" I'm like, you know, "Hey, I didn't know Tommy had a younger brother." And
How about Chick Eastwater says, what's the biggest difference working with Ronnie and with David Coverdale?
well, there's a lot. I mean, there's some funny things, but basically,
Who was funnier? Was Ronnie James Dio funnier than David Coverdale or vice versa?
yeah, they're both in a league of their own. They're both hilarious. I mean, Ronnie, we would, with Ronnie, it was all of us in the crew on one bus, and we'd have these parties where we would just be drinking wine, and cracking jokes and farting, and just like it was just hilarious. I mean, Ronnie would do the funniest stuff when he was, had a couple glasses of wine or a couple beers or whatever. And David is he's larger than life. I mean, he would it would be, you'd go shopping or something, and I remember this one time, David, he had his own bus by himself with his assistant, and he arrived earlier in somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but he arrived early and he checked into his room, and he would have his assistant set up his room with candles and blah blah. And they went out shopping afterwards. And when you go shopping with David, he would say, "Oh, of course you can afford that now. Look at, I pay you well, and be like, okay, be like, Douglas, you're a snake now, lad. You can afford it. Get it. It looks brilliant on you." But I wasn't shopping with him. I got to the hotel and there was fire trucks there, and they made us come out of our rooms. We had just gotten in our rooms. They made us come out, and there was a fire up on the penthouse suite. And David's trying to get in, and the firemen are like, "No, you can't come in." He's like, "What? What's all this? I'm David Coverdale. I'm in the top floor." And they're like, "Oh, the top floor. That's where the fire is." Well, apparently his assistant had lit a candle in the bathroom that melted down and melted the toilet seat, and then the whole toilet exploded somehow. I don't know how that works, but David and I was coming out of the hotel, and David, "They won't let me in, Douglas. Somebody, one of you," and at the time I was smoking cigarettes. He goes, "One of you smokers must have set a fire." I was like,
That's a
"Well,
great imitation. I love that imitation.
And I was like, I didn't even have a chance to light up a cigarette in my room. I just got there. We just got here, and and it turns out it was his room that had the fire, and it was a funny thing, but no, he's hilarious. David.
Did he always call you Douglas? No, sir, Douglas.
Well, anybody, he would call you James, and he wouldn't say
Yeah,
James.
yeah.
James, yes, James. Here's the scenario, James. We're going to have a nice interview, and I'm going to tell you all sorts of interesting tidbits, and coming straight from my short and curlies down here. And he's just like, he's amazing.
Are you still in touch with him?
Actually, I am. I actually just, it was interesting because now Michael Devin and Brian and I are in the Dead Daisies,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so it's kind of like a little mini part of Whitesnake era. And I talked to him I said, "Hey," I sent him a picture of the three of us. I go, "DC, could you would you do me a favor and post this? You know, we're doing some shows and just, you know, put your stamp on there, like, hey, go see my boys. And he did, and he did it. And I was really grateful about it. And so yeah, we're in touch. We, you know, he'll send me these joke things. He's super into, if you follow him on like Twitter or whatever, especially Twitter, I notice he puts tons of posts every day, and it's a lot of really funny stuff, a lot of weird stuff, whatever, but he's into it. And I still remember when Twitter came out, he was like, what's this thing, you know? And I'm like, well, it's like, I don't know what it is exactly, but it's kind of something everyone's doing, so I'm gonna try it out. And then he did. We kind of joined around.
By Jove, I love this. Is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah, yes, of course, Twitter. I love it. It's a wonderful outlet.
How about darling? Does he call everybody darling? I love it, darling.
Yeah. Everyone's darling. He would call me Sweet Prince. It was a very nice thing. He would say, Douglas, my sweet prince, I need you to come up here to Lake Tahoe, and we're going to resume our crafting of, you know.
That's when you know you spend a lot of time with someone where you can imitate them.
Well, he's larger than life. So he's just like, and when you're around somebody a lot, you can do it. I you know, there's nothing like the real thing. I'll tell you what, it would blow me away, the tone of that guy's voice, what it sounds like. You put a mic on there, and you know, you got a good voice, but I don't really have a great voice. So like, I could go on, you could give me the most expensive microphone and it would still sound like just kind of blah. But David, man, he just had this barking voice. It was just like, wow, you know, and it just really cut really nicely. It would cut through. And the other funny thing about Coverdale, when we would be, you know, now he's got an engineer and stuff, but he would send me in the studio and be like, I really like these rough mixes you've been doing. Why don't you do a mix for the album? I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I was working with a drum machine before, and this is like real drums. I don't know anything. He was, I trust you, Douglas. You can do it. And I go down. And I spent like 3 weeks in his studio, and I finally figured out how to get a drum sound, kind of, I think, you know, and worked out in the end. But then we were mixing, and he would go like, okay, the mix sounds great, but tuck the vocal in a little bit. I want to be part of the orchestra. Don't make me stand out. I want to be part of the orchestra. And I'm like, okay. So I bring it down a little bit, and I'd be like, but DC, you're David Coverdale. The record company is going to be pissed if they can't hear you, you know? And he'd say, oh, you know, forget that or whatever. And so he would basically ask me to like, hey, he would say, let's go ahead and turn the guitars up. I'm like, I know, but I turned the vocal down already. He goes, well, let's try it. Just try it. I turn the guitars up. Okay, good. Do you think we're losing the bass a little bit? I'm like, I think the bass sounds good. Maybe, you know, maybe split the difference on the guitar. So you go, nah, fuck it. Bring the bass up. I'm like, okay, I'm losing the kick drum and the snare. I'm like, I know, because we raised everything. Give them a bit of love, Douglas. So we'd raise them up, and then he'd say, I believe the vocal is a bit shy now, Douglas. And I'm like, yeah, it is very shy right now because everything else came up. It was already shy in the beginning. Let's put it back up where it belongs. And so everything just got louder and louder. And that's how it was funny. It went like that, you know, but I wasn't, you know, experienced enough to know like how to really deliver a proper mix. I can do it sort of, I can get lucky, but I mean, the guys that do it for real, they know what they're doing. And
you got to play it on different systems, right? You play it in your car. You got to play it on the speakers. You just to understand, and because what you're hearing on your headphones and you're hearing on your speakers are two different mixes.
Oh man, and we do
realities.
Do that. We'd burn a CD and we'd go in the car and we'd listen to it. We'd go in do all these different setups and try it and stuff. And it was by the time, I mean, for me, by the time I listened and worked so much on something, I have no perspective left. It's like
And that's
I
another
wouldn't
problem
know if it,
too.
yeah, I wouldn't know if it was like a Grammy award-winning mix or a piece of crap. I would have no. It's like, I think it rocks. It's loud. I don't know. I mean, it's, and I still second guess stuff. From years ago, I'll hear stuff and be like, why did we do it like that? It would have been much better if we would have. And the thing that bums me out the most is on certain tracks over the years, it'll be like, and I remember going, hey, can we bring the guitars up just a touch? And then when I listen to it, I'm like, the freaking guitar is too loud. It would be a perfect mix if I hadn't asked for that. Nobody notices that stuff except the person that
No.
is in deep in it. But there's some stuff that's hard to listen to because it's just like, we had it and we lost it, but that we ran out of time or ran out of money or whatever, and that's what it is. What it is.
You know what? That's art. You're always chasing that perfect song or sound, right?
Yeah,
And you're always, it's a constant, right? It's never, because what you like today was probably not the same thing that you liked 20 years ago. That maybe you recorded something, right? Maybe
it's
today
coming
you
around
like.
a little bit though, Jimmy. I'm actually starting to go back to, like I just started a collaboration with Black Star Amps,
Mhm.
and they're making some really cool. I mean, their
There's a
technology.
plug right there.
Yeah, that's what I was playing through, and um, but they've got an R&D group of people that are really coming up with really cool things, and so it started to get my wheels turning, and I'd hear other people do some stuff, and so I've been kind of going back to, I heard a video clip of Randy Rhoads. It was just this insanely crazy distorted sound, but it was like, it didn't sound, it just sounded big and warm, but it was over the top crazy. I mean, remember when Randy would turn his volume up, it would squeak, it would go, ooh. And I went through a period like that, and I'm just experimenting with, I'm kind of going full circle. I want to get some of those tones out of that Black Star, and it's able to do that. I'm just kind of learning the amps right now, but they're really, really awesome.
All right. That's a great
So
plug for
full
Black
circle,
Star.
once in a while, yeah, full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I guess we go full circle as humans on everything is because we always want to remember the past. It always brings us the happiest times are when you're younger, right? So that's why we always go full circle on everything, on
Yeah,
movies, on music. On that note, all right, man. We've been talking for about an hour and 22 minutes. Probably 20 minutes of it, there was just a picture of you, but it's all good.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
all
Sorry
good.
about that guy.
Buddy, this is like live. This is like rock and roll. Like you go on stage, it's just gonna happen. Strings are gonna break. Video's gonna go. You got to keep
That's
going.
it. Well, you know what? It kind of bums me out is that I think this other frequency thing, or not frequency, this other Wi-Fi channel
Channel's
is,
the right word. Yeah.
now we don't seem to be having the same problem.
No, we're not. We're good.
I
It's
don't
crystal
understand
clear.
because the other one's supposed to be the fastest one, but
I think what it
whatever.
does, it automatically moves to the channel with the least amount of traffic. That's what it does.
Okay, well, and what John Crosby would say in a situation like this is whatever. Like, whatever. It's like, Crabby, we got to do a radio show at 7 a.m. Then we're going to be on Jimmy's show at 2. Then we're going to do a meet and greet at 6. Then we're going to do a 2-hour show. Then we're going to do a meet and sign, whatever, after. All right, man, you guys want to kick my ass? Cool, whatever. Whatever. Anyway, we look forward to seeing you guys. Come see us. We're going to rock out together. And Montreal always kicks ass. The whole tour is going to be great.
Yeah. Yep. So August the 18th, the double CD and vinyl that's coming out, the best of a decade. I think it's called A Decade of
Yeah,
the
it's
Dead
the
Daisies.
best of a decade of the Dead Daisies. Just, a few bits and pieces from each record representing, there's a bunch of good tunes on there, and it kind of lines up similar to what our live show is going to be. So,
And I've seen you
don't
guys,
miss
and
it.
I gotta say, man, you guys kick some serious butt. The songs that they're chosen, they're just, you put this album, even when you put on a Dead Daisies album, they're all every track is like you guys just it's so I don't know what how to describe it, but it's maybe the word is refreshing to hear something so honest and raw but produced at the same time. I don't know what it is. I think it's just great rock and roll. That's what it comes down to.
Overall, I can say this: we are very blessed and grateful to be doing what we do, and it's a huge privilege to be able to travel and go to another country, or even just be able to play music and make a living doing it. You know, it's like a serious blessing. So thanks, you guys. Thanks to everybody, and we'll see you out there.
Okay, the tour starts on the last note, August 22nd in Pennsylvania, and it's for the month of August, basically, all the way down from the East
Goes
Coast all the way
to
to the West
September.
Coast.
We're gonna wrap it up, I think, in Los Angeles at the Roxy Theater.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a little time off. Then we go to Japan. We go into Europe. Then we're going to have another little break. Then we go back to Europe. And then we
Jeez.
wind up halfway through December. We come home for the year.
And on
But
that note, whatever.
whatever.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right, Jimmy. Thanks. Thanks to everybody. And see you in person in a few weeks.